Hi, it's Phil from Delphi Technologies. In this how-to video, we're going to be replacing the wishbone on this Volkswagen Golf. First step is, let's get the wheel off. So here's the lower wishbone, which we're going to remove. On this particular wishbone, we've got 7 bolt points, 3 at the back, 1 pivot point in the center, and the final 3 here on the lower ball joints. We'll start off by removing the lower ball joint nuts first. Now the temptation at this point may be just to pull on that arm, which you could do, but just be aware of the threads. What we don't want to do is as we pull the wishbone down, it actually damages any of the threads. So we'll loosen off the others first to allow us a little bit of free play. So when we do bring that down, we don't mark the threads. Lastly, we can remove the pivot bolt. When we remove the bolt, the arm won't fall out because it's still pinched in on the rubber. Now finally, we can lever behind the bush there. Just lower that down. It aligns it with the bolts on the bush. Go from there. Now as always, before fitting the part to the vehicle, we need to just do a check, new part versus old parts. So we're just going to lay it on top, check the dimensions. This one's looking good. And then finally, what we want to do is just do a quick check on the compliance bushes at the end, just to make sure that the angles are correct and that they're in the correct orientation. So as in reverse, we're going to place those onto the threads, which we can do on this particular suspension design. Place them into threads so we don't catch them, and then finally tap in on the bush there for the pivot bush. Now when we're using this, we need to make sure we're using a soft hammer. So now that's in, we need to get the center bolt aligned. This will require a little bit of manual manipulation of the hub just to get that aligned nice and central. Once it's that, we're going to wind it in, but we're not going to tighten it up. There we go. So we wound it all the way in. There's about 3 mil left, and we're not going to tighten that up. We're going to do that at the very end. Again, we're going to put these 3 bolts in, so we'll just bring that up. Spin the 3 bolts in, and the art to this really is to make sure that nothing's tight until all bolts have been started in the thread. Because what we don't want to do is tighten them up, and then when we come to the rear bolts, they're slightly out of alignment. Not tightening them up gives us that little bit of play, a little bit of movement to ensure we start all the bolts and nuts correctly and we don't cross thread anything. So the last part is the 3 bolts at the back. Now you'll notice if I put these in, they don't align. So they don't align into the holes, it's no good. So you're gonna have to do some manual manipulation of the arm to get them to align into that hole. They're not far out, they're about 3 or 4 mil out. So I can put that in, press it onto there, and get them to align in. The last big one. We can now wind these in, and again, don't wind the single one tight, you wanna wind them all in evenly to make sure that we're not cross-threading or putting adverse tension on them. Now we're okay to torque these up in its current position, but we're not okay to torque the pivot bolt. That one is so important that that must be torqued when the tyre is on and the arm's angle is in the correct position as it would sit normally. At the moment the arm is hanging down. This will make a massive effect on the wear of this bush and the lifetime of this bush. As this one's okay, we can torque this one up now. So both on 50 Newton meters, slightly higher on the torque, and then finally another 90 degrees. Now the wheel's back on and the vehicle's on the ground, and that suspension arm is in its resting position, not its hanging position. We can now go ahead and finally torque up that lower pivot point bolt. And that's how you replace the lower wishbone on a Volkswagen Golf. If you only take 2 things from this video, the first is get all the bolts in loose as you go. The second is make sure you torque any pivot bolts up at the very end when the vehicle's weight is on the floor. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check out Delphi Technologies' social media channels.